What if you could build an AI trading agent without writing a single line of code? And what about an AI that's self-learning and can trade crypto autonomously? Today, we're unlocking the future of AI with expert marketer and Web3 strategist, Allie Grace Garnett. This is PhraSEOlogy AI with your host, Philippe Santos. As a digital marketing professional specializing in SEO for over 20 years, I've worked with companies from startups to global Fortune 500 companies. Learn how to gain an unfair advantage from AI as we uncover tips, tools, and strategies for a killer edge. Allie, you've worked in Web3, AI, and blockchain, not to mention finance. What first drew you to AI-powered automation or automation in general?
So to be 100% honest, AI kind of scares me. Like everyone, when ChatGPT came out, I was afraid of losing my job. I was creating a lot of content in the Web3 and the crypto space. And I decided to take the approach of rather than being left behind, let's master it. Let's dive all the way in, become an expert, so that if there is a divide between those who know AI and those who do not know AI, I want to be on the first side of that divide. It makes it a little less scary for me that way.
Love it. So tell folks a little bit more about your background. What have you done in the past? What were your roots like in terms of technology or in terms of
I am an engineer by training, but I got a C in C++ in college. It was probably my worst grade in college, I'm pretty sure. So I really have no coding skills. I come at the Web3 and the AI and the crypto space from a content background. And actually, if you go further back from that, I was in financial marketing and traditional finance. I came at this from a very roundabout way to find myself building an AI agent using Gen AI and no coding skills, already being a Web3 marketer. I've been on a very long journey in this space, and it's been pretty awesome and pretty volatile for the most part. And like I said, I don't want to be left behind by AI. So I I saw that it's super necessary to integrate AI into marketing because otherwise, my peers are doing that. Many of my peers are doing that. And I don't wish to be left behind. It's a lot of fun, to be honest. What I've found is that by getting more involved with AI and doing things that I didn't think that I could do because I don't have coding skills, I'm able to build things that I never thought that I could build. It has been a lot of fun to see the way that AI can be very empowering if you just kind of don't have any fear about using it and just dive in, really.
Ali? I love the combination of fear and also excitement and maybe a thriving in a challenging environment because between Web3, finance, engineering, marketing, and AI, that's kind of a fun mix.
Yeah, I like pain.
That's hilarious. Well, look, with all the hype around AI, because there's a ton of hype and there's obviously some usefulness to AI, because that's why the hype is out there. Do you think that most people underestimate how easy it is to build these AI agents?
I was researching this and I just heard a lot of you cannot build your own AI agent with no coding skills, that it's not possible yet. And I
Mhm.
said to myself, well, why? Why is that? And so I really set out to find out the answer. And I wouldn't say that the haters are wrong about that, but they're not right either. Um, it's all about sort of that learning as you go. And I don't expect, even if I plan to continue building AI agents using Gen AI and no coding skills, I don't plan to learn code, but I
Mhm.
have gotten much, much smarter about how I prompt AI. I'm very much smarter about what the AI does and doesn't know. And I've just gotten a lot better at accommodating my own coding weaknesses to still get the results that I want.
Ali, for someone that's in marketing or in content creation and they don't have this technical background, just like you mentioned, how can they kind of get started today?
I'm not sure how much my technical background helps me in this capacity. It does help a little bit. I'm not going to lie. But let's just say you have absolute zero capacity. You hate math. You hate anything technical. The best way is to be candid with the Gen AI tool that you're using. Ask it the dumbest questions you can think of and really start at the beginning. Whenever I've gotten stuck trying to build something without coding skills and the AI is kind of sending me in circles and not solving my problems, sometimes I'll take a day and I'll think, a lot of time, and then I'll come back and it's always me that figures out the design logic, usually when there's a problem, not the AI. So it's helpful to kind of step away and use that human powered brain that you have that's actually very powerful, and see like how is the AI not performing up to how you would like it, and ask it some better questions or some different questions, or really like go back to the beginning if you have to and start again. That was some of the best piece of advice I got when I started building is don't be afraid to throw out all the code that you just put together and start over. There's nothing wrong with that. And I have done that once or twice.
Yeah, that's great advice because I know that there have been some studies out there about how going about this process is really all about iteration and that the models matter, but more importantly, the human skills matter, right? Because if you're unable to properly prompt it and you can't try different variations and be creative, you may not get what you expect.
Definitely, Gen AI is a lot better, especially those highly advanced coding models, or I'd say even the highly advanced coding models. They're still better if you think about the forest versus the trees analogy. They're much better at trees than forest. So it's the human in the loop that needs to do the thinking about the forest and simplify design logic and ask it, the Gen AI, to do less at a time to get better results.
Yeah, I guess with that, I mean, are there any specific no code AI tools that have really helped you or that you think will change how people work in Web 2, Web 3?
So I want to draw the distinction between using Gen AI to help you write code and actually using no coding platforms. I'm keenly interested in exploring no coding platforms, but I've actually been taking the former approach so far where I'm actually technically writing code. I'm just getting it from the Gen AI as opposed to skipping over code entirely and letting it be in the background. And the reason why I'm doing this is because the things that I want to build are pretty creative and pretty unique. And I'm not sure that a GPT within a walled garden is going to meet my needs. But it is something I'm very interested in exploring, building GPTs and using no code platforms like make.com and lots of stuff, that lots of ways to explore in that avenue, that or in that direction, that I would really like to take. It's just been quite preoccupied with building through the Gen AI and writing in Python.
That's a perfect segue into my next question, which is do you have any examples of powered marketing systems or processes that you've built that you're really proud of?
I am building my first one. I have a whole list of ideas. I'm building my first one that's called Hidden Alpha. And so what it does is it surfaces high quality posts on X from small accounts, basically accounts that have been totally ignored by X because the algorithm is not a meritocracy, and yet they're still posting great alpha. And so, yeah, and there's a leaderboard called Top Underdogs to show these small accounts that are posting the most hidden alpha. If you want, I can share my screen and show it to you. It's not live yet, and it's a little bit ugly because I've been having some challenges with Gen AI to do very simple things, like even getting like a headline and a leaderboard aligned, simple things that I've spent way too much time on actually trying to fix. But I'd be happy to share it with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Why don't we? That's kind of cool.
Okay, let's do it.
Great use case, by the way.
I'm trying to solve my own problem. So here we go. You arrive here. I made this logo with the help of my own brain and a human to polish it up. As you can see, it's a play on the X logo. And that actually has probably been the most human in the loop part of this whole project so far. But you come here, you've got two options. You can get alpha. These are all kind of related to AI and Web3. And then this is the one I was trying to get aligned with the header, but I couldn't. And you come down here and you can see who's posting it, how long ago it was, which this will be updated so that you're getting the most recent posts. You get to see the category, you get to see the post, and then if you really want to go to the post itself, it will take you over to the post in X. And then we come back up, so you've got your whole feed. You can obviously, as I mentioned, you can sort it by category, and then we've got the leaderboard. These are the top underdogs, the same categories. This ha is for hidden alpha. So this is the top underdogs with the most impressions in this tool, and it shows which categories they're ranking for. And of course, if you want to visit any of their profiles, you can. So that's where we're at so far. It's pretty ugly, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to get some human intervention to make it look pretty. I'm actually kind of debating because I have so many ideas of things I want to build, and I don't want to spend 3 hours of my life trying to get a leaderboard aligned with a header. I am considering building things in rough form at scale, and maybe I sell the prototype, sell the MVP out, and then somebody else can make it pretty and monetize it. When you start to build and you start to do creative things, you might feel like you don't know what you're doing, but it's pretty interesting how quickly you can start to have more ideas. There's so many different directions that you can take with once you start building, and yeah, it's pretty exciting like that.
Yeah, no, like even though like you said, it's maybe not in its full form in terms of aesthetics, the function is really key, and I think that's the important part is that not everything will be beautiful, and you might need some help from others who are coders, but at the end of the day, that's actually pretty impressive. The fact that you could come up with something that does that, given no code, or maybe you're just doing some editing, but still, pretty cool.
I'm
Thanks for
definitely not.
sharing.
Thank you. You're welcome. You know what's interesting about that is the biggest components using Gen AI are by far the easiest to make. I made that leaderboard in like 5 minutes, maybe less. But the tweaking of the leaderboard and even the more minor the aspect I'm trying to improve, it seems like the more time that I spend on it, which is super interesting. It's been very interesting to me to have that experience. That's why I want to build big things and just sell them off when they're still ugly.
I love it. Well, again, it's the functionality that matters for most folks, right? It's not, of course, the wrapping means a lot, but if you can't have a tool that you really need and it doesn't even exist, who cares, right? Yeah, cool. So let me ask you something. Based on your experience so far, what do you think is one of the most prominent mistakes that marketers make when leveraging AI to build something new like this?
I feel like there's a push to use AI just to use AI, and that's not actually the best approach. Like, yes, you don't want to get left behind and ignore it, but what are your reasons for using it? Like, really ask yourself, make sure that your use of AI is aligned with the business goals of your organization. Otherwise, you're sort of just lost, right? And maybe it's not even improving your systems, or maybe it's not giving you better output. But ask yourself those questions and really align around the business goals to make sure that you're not just, looking at the next shiny object because it's shiny.
Yeah, I love that. I think I've had several conversations in the past on this podcast about how folks need to really just have an idea of what they're trying to achieve, but it's okay to like kind of monkey around and try things out, but knowing that you're going to waste a lot of time, so it's better to have a focus and try out in one platform, see how that goes, and then if you really need something new, you'll know why. So I really appreciate that, you saying that, because I think that's very reflective of how folks need to approach this. It can be a huge time waster to do, play with AI tools and to kind of go through the spread, especially if you have other things to do. So just better to focus on one and start to develop skills, and then those should be transferable. Love it.
Absolutely. I came up with a list of a couple hundred ways for a Bitcoin education platform the other day, how they could potentially integrate AI into their systems internally and externally. And that could have kept me busy for years, right? To implement all of those AI integrations. So it's just super, that just really emphasizes and just really illustrates the length of that list, shows you have to choose. Pick the most
Exactly.
impactful AI initiatives and focus on those and do them really well before you try to add more.
Hopefully not. We won't have 100,000 different AI agents producing that for you.
Could very well happen in the grand scheme of where AI is headed.
Ali, I know you've done quite a bit in this space. So, what makes Web3 marketing so different from traditional digital marketing?
I'm going to give like the most cliche answer where if you watched any kind of Web3 marketing podcast or studied any of this, it gets talked about a lot, but it's that community aspect. The fact that Web3 projects are decentralized and really do require that community participation. And I'm speaking very broadly, but generally speaking, do really require that team and community participation to make the protocol a success, because so much power is in distribution that a Web3 marketer who knows what they're doing is going to map their marketing efforts to that team based and that community based structure. It's a big reason why social and why crypto Twitter is such a hot place and continues to be. It's a big reason why I always push team based marketing whenever I working with a company. I really want to activate the unique voices of everybody on the team because that's what maps to the way that the protocol operates.
How has AI kind of changed the way that brands engage with Web3 communities and DAOs? And for everybody who doesn't understand what a DAO is, if you could explain that.
So a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization that's essentially it's honestly most Web3 protocols do not do a good job of putting the A into DAO. They're not very autonomous, and they may not even be entirely decentralized. But the idea is like essentially like a corporation without that centralized control is a good way to sort of frame that. Actually, the way that AI can really benefit the DAOs and Web3 communities isn't actually entirely different in any significant way from the way that AI can benefit other communities or the ways that other marketers outside the space could leverage it. A really big opportunity is around personalization. So, how can AI use the data that has at its disposal about you, the customer, to personalize your journey? And then, more likely, you're going to complete the journey and convert into a user or a paying customer or what have you. But it's really all about that personalization, which can be a very highly complex integration, and especially if you don't have the data. So actually what I'm seeing is like at that early stage startups stage, when you're an early stage company, you're just starting to think about marketing, most protocols are not using AI actually, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like you said, you can put a lot of time into AI that's not really going to move the bottom line. It's not really going to help you achieve your goals. So it's really important to think about AI thoughtfully and not just get caught up in the hype and be goal oriented.
Makes a lot of sense. And you bringing up the fact that AI involved in decentralized projects could be a little scary just from a privacy perspective. I mean, it makes it more complex, right? So I'd imagine that it has to be thought through pretty well, and folks have to have a grasp of how they're applying it.
And that's where being goal oriented is going to solve a lot of that. If you know why you're trying to do something, then the entire process is going to go a lot better and be generally more impactful.
This is a big question, but basically, what role do you think AI can, will or does play in SEO, content generation, social media, and other marketing functions, especially for Web3, but you can talk about today's world as well.
I'm pretty cynical, to be honest. I think that I heavily use Gen AI as a research tool for my own content creation. But if we're looking ahead, 3, 5, 10 years, I would imagine that me right now I have to act as an editor for this content. I would imagine that need for editing will like be reduced if not go away. So if you're a content creator in this space, if you care a lot about Google search results because you based your whole career around SEO, I would be trying to upskill and trying to heavily learn AI so that you're at least having that as a very strong tool in your toolbox and you're not just getting replaced. But I'm quite cynical about the need for human content creators, if you, especially the further into the future that we look.
Yeah, that's been a contentious issue for a lot of folks because the nature of creativity that comes from us hasn't been exactly replicated in an AI generator. But that being said, it's getting better every day, and I think as if we are able to do minor edits, that's saving people a lot of time, and then I guess their skills have to go elsewhere. But that being said, though, there are certain things that we are just so much better at being creative with right now, but in the future, who knows? So leaving that open.
I don't know.
I guess
I kind of took
I don't
your
know.
point of view. I kind of took your point of view for uh, a long time, and then I got better at prompting AI, and I started getting better content results, and that was what really made me see that the quality of the prompt in very specific ways, very kind of nuanced and specific ways, but the quality of the prompt is so important. And as more people get better at prompting, it will I think will become more widely known that you actually can get the Gen AI to produce content that even someone as picky as me, I think most people are terrible writers. Even someone as picky as me can produce content through Gen AI that requires minimal editing on my part.
Yeah, true fact. I mean, prompting skills do matter here. I'd like to think that those that are really good copywriters, those that are really good at writing copy for people, they still have an advantage right now, especially because they can think about things that are happening now. They can think about new topics. They can see what trends are happening. So far, we don't have all that capability in some of the platforms that exist. That's the only reason. I think once that changes, I think that will introduce a new complex measure that will make it a lot harder for copywriters to stand out. But let's stay positive because I feel like everybody has a role. And I think as long as we continue to learn and we're lifelong learners and we advance with the skills that are required to produce great outputs, I think that's going to make the difference. That's where the positivity lies.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's stay positive.
Yeah, only the future will tell, but it's okay. We'll get through it. I wanted to ask you if you could share a real world example of something that you've worked on, or maybe something that you've worked through a company with regard to innovating using AI and specific to marketing.
I want to talk about FOMO.ai, very small platform, but I see a lot of potential. It's a marketing tool. It essentially assembles a virtual marketing team for you where you've got a virtual SEO person, a virtual content creator, a virtual graphic designer. But what's really interesting to me is the way that the tool builds the brain that it needs, essentially. So it starts by asking you some basic questions about brand voice, brand positioning, brand messaging, etc. And then it gives you an output and it allows you to edit that output before you go to the next layer and do basically the same process to build this brain. And so that layered approach really ends up producing some pretty high quality content. It's quite surprising. And it also does quite good at images. So that layered building, I think I'd love to see more marketing tools build like that and to see more of these types of tools that can give really, really powerful results. Because after it builds this brain, it essentially does create these virtual employees for you that you can use for different functions. So, yeah, FOMO.ai, big fans, and hopefully I'll be able to get involved and market it more because to me, it markets itself. It's a really high quality tool.
Between the multimodal capabilities and obviously creating these roles that you would need to be more efficient in your business, I think technology's just come a long way.
Yeah, I created a LinkedIn post that said, I will see myself out as a marketer
Hilarious. Well, but you're still the one that's ideating and using these things for a purpose. So at the end of the day, you're still not out.
for now.
With regard to our talk, so I'd love to get a sense of how you see AI and Web3 evolving over the next 5 years or over the next wave. Let's call it the wave because 5 years seems like a long time.
So, what I feel very strongly is that AI is the narrative that Web3 has needed. And also at the same time, AI very much needs to be decentralized because when I say that AI scares me a little bit, I'm actually mostly talking about centralized AI because if you can actually map this highly advanced technology to human intelligence, which is by nature decentralized, that's a lot different scenario than just having the Sam Altmans of the world benefit from this highly advanced technology. It would be like if the internet itself, like all the profits accrued to just a very, very small number of people. Like that's a highly different scenario than the internet today, which is decentralized in the most fundamental ways. So I really I feel like AI gets talked about in a very general terms without that distinction between centralized and decentralized. And I would like to see the narrative be segmented more, where these two different types of AI are treated differently. Um, I might have missed a question, but yeah, that's a really big point for me that I want to make sure, it should be in the narrative more about like who really benefits from this AI and how can you protect yourself and how can you make AI benefit you as opposed to you providing data and you being a simp for centralized AI.
Well said. You brought up a couple of things that I just recall now, like Deepsea, for example. How do you feel about that actually coming into the fray and creating some kind of disruption?
Right. So that's exactly my point, is that more of us should be using DeepSeek and less of Claude and ChatGPT. I actually made a post about this morning. I called myself a total hypocrite because I spend all day writing narratives about decentralized AI and I am deeply passionate about it. But then an early morning at the end of the day when I want to use this AI, build this AI agent with no coding skills, DeepSeek is shutting me out most of the time. It's telling me it's too busy, or I get like 5 prompts deep and it tells me to go away. And so I end up back at using centralized AI. Like this morning, I was building this agent. I had two different ChatGPT windows open. And
Mhm.
it's like a total cognitive dissonance, but I want to build this thing. And right now, the most advanced models that are widely accessible and are not turning me away are centralized. And there's urgency there because I'm feeding it data that I'm not going to get back, even if it were to be found later that I should have been compensated for that data. That's probably not going to happen. It would be just a slap on the wrist. So there's a certain like no going back aspect of using centralized AI, or supporting it, I should say, that the tide needs really to shift sooner than later to where decentralized options are just as sophisticated and just as accessible, so that decentralized AI is the model that achieves mass adoption rather than everybody just someday using ChatGPT. And Sam Alton is a like gazillionaire because of it.
Well, so you're using DeepSeek what on the web, or are you using it as like are you installing self-hosting?
So I've been just trying to use it on the web, but thank you for that tip. I will try to self host it and see if that makes a difference for me.
Yeah, so I've heard the benefits, and this is kind of obvious, but like the benefits of DeepSeek doing it self-hosting, that you get to keep the data to yourself, so no one actually has it
Right.
but you. And the second is that you can ask it anything you want, and it should not be censored. In some cases, it's censored. And there's one other thing, which is basically it does require some technical know-how or a lot of Googling to get actually installed properly, but there are some pretty helpful tips out there on how to get it installed. So I haven't fully tried it, but I was going to install it as well. So just to mess around with it and not play with the web tool, because I know that they're collecting all of that data. And of course, it goes to China. So we may not want any one country having all of our data.
Correct. 100% correct. There's a big push towards, governments need to protect their data too, right? Like, governments don't want to be giving up all their data to these protocols either. So there's lots of entities that need to be protecting their data. So I'll have to ask ChatGPT how to install the desktop version of DeepSeek.
Yeah, why not? You should report back, see if it was that easy. One question that kind of stemmed from that, though. So I love the idea of decentralized. I agree with you. Centralized can be its own risk. But is it the devil we know or the devil we don't? Because again, with having it decentralized, that means things could go awry and we wouldn't even know how to shut it down.
That's totally true. I'm a big fan of basic, at the very minimum, basic ethical guardrails for decentralized AI, like don't kill anybody. It's an interesting moral question. And it's essentially, we're using a lot of analogies here, right? Like, what's the lesser of two evils? Do you want to take that chance on innovation? And to be honest, innovation happens regardless, right? If you don't innovate, somebody else is going to. Or do you want to just stick with that age old problem that we've been dealing with where big tech gets all our data and we are the product, right? So I'm a little more open to that experimentation, especially since it's pretty much an innovation is like an unstoppable force.
Mhm.
Let's see what happens, and let's make sure that those basic ethical guardrails are in place so that, like you said, it doesn't totally go off the rails, because that is a real risk in my view, and it does need to be accounted for.
That's good. And we've gone to this royal concept of ethical risk and challenge. But like, what about from a typical marketing standpoint, an individual marketer, or let's say an entrepreneur that's working through these things like you are? What kind of strategic challenges would you have from the ethics side of things?
So, there's all these like AI checker tools coming out to see if the content was made by AI and things like that.
Mhm.
Honestly, who cares? If you like the content and it speaks to you and it helps you, does it matter if AI wrote it? I don't really think it does, actually. I think it's more of a concern for marketers that they don't want to automate to the point that they're putting out garbage. That should always be a real concern. But just on the surface of it, whether or not an AI like wrote something, I don't really think it matters. And I think increasingly you'll see that people don't care as long as the quality of the content is there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it shouldn't really matter, but putting on my SEO hat or my content hat, I can see that one reason might be okay, if it's easily detected as AI, fully AI content, it could already kind of go through an algorithmic issue because it may be given some kind of bias. The second thing is with regard to having AI content, you may not actually know what it's saying, and you may be putting out incorrect facts if you're not doing any kind of editing or checking. So that's another thing that through time, through all of these tools, through the beginning of OpenAI being public, it's been talked about. Okay, are you sure that these facts are real? Are you sure that these scenarios are real? You have to do a lot of checking yourself. And as these models get better and they actually do a lot of that verification, or they actually do not hallucinate, we still have to always check some, right? Because I feel like that is still in the mix, especially when you get creative.
100%. I would argue that at some point Google will stop caring or penalizing the AI generation component, but fact checking
Mhm.
will always matter. You're right. I think that there will always need, at least at a checking level, at least right now, there has to be a human in the loop. I actually do, when I'm writing something, I will use Gen AI to fact check specific sentences. And it's been quite good for that because you're giving it a targeted thing and asking, like, make sure this is correct. So you can actually leverage AI on a limited basis for fact checking. But 100%, that's where, as a marketer, you need to make sure what's going out there.
Yeah. Well, I played with this too, and I've made a couple of GPTs just for fun in ChatGPT, and I made sure that it actually, when it gave me information or gave me a source or gave me a fact or a statistic, that it would verify that statistic with three different websites so that I would
Yes.
know that it was real, right? And then I could fact check it myself. But it was nice to have that extra, hey, don't go past this guide rail. Make sure that it actually meets my objectives.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the perfect way to do fact checking with Gen AI.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about something that is kind of fun too, right? What's a significant opportunity that you believe people aren't seeing yet in decentralized AI?
Okay, so I'm working for a company called Kit Protocol, and I'm super excited about superior agents. So they just got launched maybe a week and a half ago, but they've been in the works since about 2020. And these superior agents are not your grandmother's AI. They're not just making cute images. They are not just writing emails. They are not constrained by human logic. They're actually self learning agents that you merely give them a goal as in the form of a prompt. Maybe you give a few ethical guardrails, or they can be built in, and the agent will find creative ways to accomplish that goal almost by any means necessary. So the first use case is autonomous crypto trading because that seems to have a very obvious product market fit, and it can make crypto trading accessible to a lot more people. Essentially, the superior agent is given a trading goal and it finds very creative ways to achieve that goal. And that's, like I said, it's just the first use case. Many more diversified use cases can be this that superior agents can support. And we're super excited because it's AI that's, to be honest, it's a little unhinged. And we're excited about testing it in this controlled environment with guardrails on, and we will make sure that the AI doesn't kill anybody, but we also want to see push some limits and see what it can do because, like you said, you can't stop innovation. You just can't. And so it's better to direct it in a way that is going to do the most good and, find out in controlled environments what bad could potentially occur.
Thanks for sharing. That's pretty cool. Just thinking about how that might actually benefit traders would be insane, especially if it's an effective algorithm or it's got a lot of good data attached.
Right. And imagine that you don't really have trading skills or the time, and you can prompt this agent, and the agent becomes a money making tool for you. That's fantastic. That's a new economic asset, or that's a new asset class right there, which is, you
Absolutely.
don't get one of those. You don't get new asset classes just every day.
You'll definitely have to keep us up to date on the progress there. That sounds pretty awesome, though.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Let's go into a fun round here and talk about some of your favorite tips for leveraging AI agents or AI in general. Do you have a couple of tips for us?
I do. I even wrote them down. Okay, my first tip: be highly specific when you're prompting Gen AI, especially if you're trying to build something like that, it's involving code or something you're actually trying to do something more than, get grandma's emails to be written for you. Be highly specific in your prompts. That's my first tip. And in a related way, provide as much background information as you can. If you have documents, upload them. If you have something that you can copy paste in, do that. Don't be afraid to copy and paste in the same type of background information every few prompts too, because the AI might forget. You should assume that after a few prompts that the AI's memory is going to get a bit faulty. So, continue to prompt it in a very thorough way. My other tip is that the AI model matters. So ChatGPT 4.0 is less intelligent than o1 mini high, and at least in my experience, you can use 4.0 forever and it will never cut you off. Where there are, at least on the basic, the professional plan or whatever, the that lower tier $20 a month plan, you will get cut off once a week with those higher models if you use it enough. So you don't want to waste prompts. You can prompt the AI with each time you enter in something, you could give it like 5 different tasks, and it can handle that with the higher models. So don't waste your prompts. And if you're asking for about something that's a little less technical or not as coding based, maybe swap over to the 4.0 model so that you're not wasting prompts on those higher, more advanced models. And then my last tip is, we covered before, you are ultimately responsible for the design logic. If you are trying to code something, AI is only mostly seeing the trees and not the forest. So if you feel stuck, sit back, think about it, take a new approach. You can always simplify the design logic a bit more, is more than likely, and that will help you a lot. And then, yes, my last tip is, maybe there's a lot of like pride involved with using a Gen AI tool and having no coding skills and like really building something, like that's bragging rights to a certain extent. But don't be afraid to ask someone else. I'm a total novice. I spent 3 hours on the phone with a developer friend of mine, and he gave me a lot of perspective, like the forest versus the trees perspective, how to prompt so that I'm not wasting prompts. A lot of these tips that I gave you actually came from talking to somebody who knows more than me. So don't be afraid to do that. It'll get you a lot of help, and that you will not ever get from the Gen AI, more than likely. Once you get smarter at prompting the Gen AI, it gets a lot easier. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask a human something.
That's amazing. And yes, if you don't have skills in a specific area, it doesn't hurt to ask anybody, especially if they are talented in this area in terms of automation or AI.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So, Ali, to close out the show, I wanted to make sure that you had a chance to let folks know how they could start with automation, how they could follow you, like where they can get in touch, because obviously there's a lot more coming out of you, I'm sure, soon. And from some of the samples and examples that you provided today, there's a ton of progress that we'd love to follow.
For sure. Yeah. I'm taking very much a build in the open type of approach to building this AI tool. And that's a lot of fun for me. It's good exposure. Obviously, that's like marketing 101. So if you want to keep up with my progress, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on X. I will be getting ignored on X by the algorithm, which is exactly why I'm building this tool. And you can also check out my website. So I'm sure we'll get all three of those links in the show notes so you can visit me.
Sounds good. Are you by chance getting onto Blue Sky?
I am on Blue Sky. I have always debated conceptually, like, do I really want to be the first person, or, one of those early adopters of a social channel? I do find it highly ironic that the Web3 community is so centered around the centralized platform that is X. And so it's like another way that I'm like maybe a bit of a hypocrite and I should spend more time over there. It's those network effects, those things are vicious. People want to be where the most action is. And there's only so much time in the day, so you kind of have to pick and choose wisely. So I will cop to not being nearly as active as I should be on Blue Sky, on Farcaster, etc. There's lots of cool stuff going on there, and it's certainly much more ideologically aligned than the platforms that I just told you to come find me on.
Please support the show by subscribing, liking, and leaving a comment. It's free and helps us grow and get even better content for you, and it's also appreciated.